My name is Arthur Vance. I am 68 years old, and my hands still carry the scars of 40 years spent framing houses in the Michigan cold. I want to tell you about the Tuesday morning my only son sat across from a bank manager, looked at me with total pity, and declared that I was no longer in my right mind. He had just tried to wire $142,000 out of my checking account to finalize the purchase of a luxury lake house. He thought he held all the cards. He thought my silence over the past 6 months was the silence of a man losing his grip on reality. What he did not know was that the bank manager sitting across from him was a man named Thomas Reed. Thomas and I had been playing poker on alternating Friday nights since 1998, and we had planned for this exact moment down to the minute. Before I go any further, if this story resonates with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where you are watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one. Now, let me take you back to how a father and son ended up across a mahogany desk, fighting for my life savings. I built Vance Construction out of the back of a beat-up Ford pickup in 1982. We did roofing, framing, and drywall. It was the kind of work that breaks your back by the time you are 50, but it pays the bills and it puts food on the table. My wife Eleanor managed the books. She kept me honest, and she kept the business in the black. We never lived large. We bought a modest house in Grand Rapids, took one vacation a year to a cabin up north, and saved everything else. Eleanor used to say that money was only good for 2 things: peace of mind and taking care of your blood. We had one child, Michael. We gave him everything we never had: private school, a paid-off college degree in finance, and a down payment for his first house when he married a woman named Stephanie. Michael was smart, but he was always looking for the shortcut. He wanted the corner office without working the mailroom. He wanted the custom home without swinging the hammer. I loved him, but I saw the greed in him early on. Eleanor saw it too. She used to smooth things over, reminding me that the world was different now, that kids moved at a faster pace. Eleanor passed away 4 years ago, pancreatic cancer. It took her in 7 months. When she died, a huge part of me went with her. I sold the business to my foreman a year later. I took the buyout, combined it with our savings and Eleanor's life insurance, and I suddenly found myself sitting on a very quiet, very lonely nest egg of about $3.8 million. For the first 2 years after she died, Michael was a good son. He called on Sundays. He brought my 2 granddaughters over for holidays. I thought we were okay. Then I had a minor health scare, just a dizzy spell in the grocery store that ended up being an inner ear issue. They kept me in the hospital overnight for observation. It was nothing serious, but it scared Michael. Or at least, he acted like it scared him. He came to my house the day after I was discharged. He brought a thick manila envelope and set it on my kitchen table. He had that soft, careful tone of voice people use when they are talking to a wounded animal. He told me he was worried. He said he wanted to make sure I was protected if something worse happened. He slid a durable power of attorney across the table. He said it was just a precaution, something his lawyer recommended, so he could handle my medical bills and manage the house if I ever got incapacitated. I was tired. I was grieving my wife, and I trusted my son. I signed the paper. The changes started small. I noticed a $400 charge on my credit card for a restaurant in Chicago. I had not been to Chicago in 6 years. I called Michael. He laughed it off, said he accidentally used the wrong card saved on his phone and mailed me a check the next day. I let it go. 3 weeks later, I went to pay my property taxes and noticed a $4,500 withdrawal from my primary checking account. The memo line just said, "Consulting retainer." I drove to Michael's house that evening. Stephanie opened the door. She was wearing a watch that cost more than my first truck. Michael came into the foyer, and I asked him about the money. He put his hand on my shoulder, sighed heavily, and told me he was organizing my assets. He said he hired a wealth management firm to optimize my tax burden. He spoke very slowly, articulating every word like I was hard of hearing. He told me I was getting confused by the complex paperwork. He said, "Dad, just let me handle the stress. You rest." I did not argue. I just looked at him. I saw the way his eyes darted away from mine. I saw the slight smirk on Stephanie's face in the background. I drove home, sat at my kitchen table, and drank a cup of black coffee in the dark. I knew right then he was treating me like I was already dead. He was clearing out the vault while I was still breathing. The next morning, I drove down to First National Bank. I did not call the 1-800 number. I walked right past the tellers and knocked on the glass door of the branch manager's office. Thomas Reed looked up from his computer. Thomas is a man who understands numbers, but more importantly, he understands people. I sat in his office for 2 hours. I showed him the withdrawals. I told him about the power of attorney. Thomas pulled up my accounts. Michael had not just taken the $4,500. He had been quietly shifting my investment portfolios, liquidating stable mutual funds, and moving the cash into a holding account he controlled. Thomas looked at me and asked what I wanted to do. I could have called the police. I could have pressed charges for elder fraud, but Michael was my son, and I wanted to give him enough rope to either hang himself or pull himself up. I told Thomas to freeze the primary investment accounts under a security protocol. We set up an irrevocable trust. I moved $3.6 million into that trust, naming my granddaughters as the sole beneficiaries when they turned 25. I made Thomas the independent trustee. I left exactly $150,000 in my personal checking account. That was the bait. Thomas put a silent flag on the checking account. Any transfer over $10,000 required an in-person authorization from me, regardless of the power of attorney. 2 months passed. Michael stopped calling on Sundays. He stopped bringing the girls over. I found out through a family friend that he had put an offer on a massive lakefront property up in Traverse City. He was telling people his firm had a record year. I knew where the down payment was coming from. Then came the Tuesday morning. Michael called me at 8 a.m. His voice was tight, anxious. He said we needed to go to the bank together to sign some routine tax documents. He picked me up in a brand new European SUV. The seats smelled like fresh leather. He did not say much on the ride. When we walked into the bank, he led me by the elbow. He was physically guiding me, projecting the image of a dutiful son, taking care of his frail, failing father. We sat down in Thomas's office. Thomas closed the door. Michael handed Thomas a folder. He explained, in that same slow, condescending voice, that he needed to execute a wire transfer for $142,000 to a title company. He said the system had glitched and blocked it. Thomas looked at the paperwork. He looked at Michael. Then he looked at me. Thomas asked Michael why the money was moving. Michael smiled, a thin, polished corporate smile. He said he was restructuring my real estate portfolio to provide me with a better living situation. He said my current house was getting too difficult for me to maintain in my declining state. I sat there quietly. I let him spin the lie. Thomas typed on his keyboard. He looked up and said the account flag required my verbal consent. He asked me directly, "Arthur, do you authorize this transfer?" Before I could open my mouth, Michael interrupted. He leaned across the desk. "Thomas, I have the durable power of attorney right here. My father's memory has been slipping badly these last few months. He gets confused about finances. The doctors think it is early-stage dementia. I am legally authorized to make this transfer on his behalf, to protect his estate." The room went completely silent. The hum of the air conditioner suddenly sounded very loud. My own son was looking a man in the eye and declaring me incompetent to steal the money I broke my back to earn. I looked at Michael. I did not yell. I did not cry. I just asked him one question. "Is that what you tell Stephanie when you buy the cars and the watches, that you are protecting my estate?" Michael froze. The corporate smile vanished. His face flushed bright red. "Dad, you do not know what you are talking about. You are confused." I turned to Thomas. I nodded once. Thomas picked up his desk phone. He pressed a single button on his speed dial. He put the phone on speaker and set it on the desk. 2 rings later, A woman answered. "Legal department, this is Sarah." "Sarah, this is Thomas Reed at the main branch," he said calmly. "I need to execute a hard revocation of a power of attorney on account ending in 4409. Client Arthur Vance is present and completely lucid. Furthermore, I need to flag an attempted fraudulent wire transfer to a third-party title company." Michael stood up so fast his chair hit the wall behind him. "What are you doing? You cannot do that. I have legal authority." I looked up at him. "You had a piece of paper, Michael." "You never had authority. I built everything you are wearing, everything you are driving, and the life you are trying to buy. I let you think you were outsmarting me because I wanted to see exactly how little I meant to you." Michael started to stammer. He threatened to sue the bank. He threatened to call the police. Thomas just handed him a printed summary of the trust document. Michael looked down at the single sheet of paper. He saw the balance of the checking account he had tried to drain. And then he saw the note about the $3.6 million blind trust that he could never touch, never access, and never control. He realized in that exact moment that not only was he not getting the lake house, but he was completely cut off. The safety net was gone. The bank of his father was permanently closed. "The earnest money you put down on that lake house," I said quietly, standing up from my chair. "You are going to lose it when this wire fails. I suggest you start figuring out how to sell that new SUV to cover the difference." I did not wait for his response. I shook Thomas's hand, walked out of the office, and walked out the front doors, into the bright morning sun. I took a cab home. Michael called me 14 times that night. He left voicemails crying, begging, apologizing, blaming the stress of his job, blaming Stephanie, blaming everything except his own greed. I deleted every single one without listening past the first 5 seconds. It has been a year since that morning in the bank. I have not seen Michael. I hear through the grapevine that he had to downsize his house and that he and Stephanie are going through a bitter divorce. I set up a college fund for my granddaughters directly with their mother, ensuring Michael cannot touch a dime of it. I am spending my time volunteering at a local trade school, teaching young kids how to frame a wall straight and true. I am doing fine, better than fine. Money makes people do terrible things. It reveals who they really are when they think nobody is watching. My son thought my silence was weakness. He thought my age made me a target. He forgot that a man who spends 40 years building houses knows exactly how to tear one down. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family over money? Have you ever had someone mistake your kindness for weakness? Leave your story in the comments below. If this video hit home for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you want more stories like this, check the link in the description. I will see you there.